All right, I think we are live everywhere tonight, so that's good. Yeah, let's go ahead and shrink this down and move this over, and hopefully we'll get some people in here. I'm gonna share out the live on my other account real quick. If you're joining, welcome to Decon Q&A with CrystalJae. And my guest tonight is Cyber Deconstruction. So you're going to get to come up. You're going to get to ask the questions. And I'm just going to share out the live real quick. If you're just joining, please tap the screen. Let's get to 5,000 likes. Oh, thank you for the heart me as quickly as possible. Also, share out the live. We need to get 100 shares as quickly as possible. And make sure you're sending the team bracelets and the heart me's. And there's Cyber. Hopefully you all can hear okay tonight. Cyber, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing good. Yourself?
I can't hear you. Oh. You know why I can't hear you? Because I'm not plugged in. Hang on one second. I am not plugged in. Now I can hear you. Are you there? Can you hear me? Oh, I thought I could.
I am.
There
I
we
can
go.
hear you.
There we go. There we go. All right. Just trying to get all of this up. So how's your day been today?
It's been good. Been good. I can't complain. How's your day been?
Something happened to my sound there. Talk to me again.
How's your day been?
Okay, I can hear you now. I don't know what the heck is going on with my sound tonight. Everything's connected now.
Sometimes you just need to take your computer setup and just throw it outside and give it a swift kick.
I am telling you, I'm so ready to do that.
What you go find an old computer of yours, you put it in the microwave, and you make the other one watch.
I might have to do that. Well, I have some questions for you while everybody's tapping that screen and sharing out the live and doing all the good things. So I'm going to start. And then you guys, if you would like to come up, hey everybody, hey Traveler, hey Haitian Atheist, hey Lizzie, good to see you all, Glitter. So many great people here tonight. Make sure you guys are sharing out the live and tapping and doing all the good things, okay? I'm going to start with some, just some icebreaker questions for you, Cyber. And then if you guys want to come up and ask Cyber questions, the request box is open. So just come on up. And remember, Cyber kind of knows a lot about everything, okay? He knows the Bible, he knows the Book of Mormon, and he knows, and you're studying the Quran right now, right?
Yes.
So if anybody can answer your question, Cyber's going to be the one to do it. All right, Cyber, here are my hard-hitting journalist questions. Do you have a tissue box ready? Okay.
I got a scripture full of Christian eye whites.
Okay. All right. If you could make a documentary about anything serious or silly, what would it be?
If I had anything serious or silly, I would honestly love a documentary of the evolution of Mesopotamian religion into modern day rabbinic Judaism.
Ooh.
I would love to see that fleshed out.
That would be a really good documentary. Much better than mine. I would do a documentary about cookies of the world, just so I could travel all around the world and eat cookies, frankly.
That's fine. if I was to do something like that, it would be pancakes because I
Ooh.
love pancakes.
Oh, that
So
would
it would be the same thing.
that would be good too. You guys, thank you for the heartbeats. Appreciate it. Okay, what's a childhood belief you held on to for way too long?
That God existed. I grew up practicing Orthodox Judaism, and in Orthodox Judaism, Moses existed, right? Slavery in Egypt existed, and despite being shown evidence that, like, hey, this isn't the case, it was dropping that dogma.
Yeah.
That no, this it did happen. We have an oral tradition because essentially that's what the Talmud is, the Mishnah, is that we have the oral tradition that this happened.
Right.
And once I was able to shed that and actually take an unbiased look at it, they just realized the rest of it's just garbage.
Yep. I would have to say that's the same, but for me it was Christianity, of course. And yeah, I really did hold on to that for way too long. When I first would think about when I started deconstructing, I always say it was about 10 years ago. But I think the truth is that I was always deconstructing, you know what I mean? Like, I was always questioning things, but I wasn't giving it up, even though I had the questions. And yeah, I held on to it for way too long.
I think that's a hallmark of a lot of Christians, though. When you get like the actual, genuine people that are religious in general, they're always questioning. They look at something, and even though it may not change their opinion immediately, they look at it and they go, something's just not right about this. And then they'll go, and in the case of, religion, you get an apologetics answer. And it may suffice at the time, because normally you don't have scriptures with you or anything. You're just talking to somebody in authority. But then when you go back to it, you're like, no, that answer didn't quite answer it. That doesn't quite scratch the itch.
Yeah.
I still have the itch.
Yeah, for sure. What's a completely ordinary... Oh, wait. Nope, sorry, I skipped one. If your pet or favorite animal could talk for one day, what's the first thing you'd ask them?
So I'm about to get a hedgehog.
Ooh.
Next month I'm going to be getting a hedgehog. And hedgehogs do this thing called anointing. And it's where whenever they get a strange scent that they're not familiar with, they'll like lick the air, or like in nature, they'll go out if they find like a good one in nature is like poo. They'll find poo that they're not familiar with, and they'll eat it, and then they'll chew it until they get like a frothy mouth, and then they spit it on their quills.
Okay.
And we don't know why they do this. We have no idea why they anoint themselves. So I think that's what I'd ask the hedgehog is, why do you anoint yourself?
That would be a good
we
question.
still don't know why. There's a bunch of theories for it.
What's one of your favorite theories about it?
So my favorite theory about it is that they're a prey animal, and it first got noticed again with poo. And so my theory is that they do it to mask themselves, so that their predators, when they curl up in a ball, those spines are out, and it opens up that smell to their predators. And the predator goes, oh, I don't want to eat poo, and they leave them alone.
That's probably a pretty good theory there. I would just get all of my pets together. You guys, I'm sorry if it's a little laggy on TikTok. If you're having troubles on TikTok, remember I am live right now on YouTube. The link is in my bio, and Twitch as well. And hello YouTube, hello Twitch. I would just get all my pets together and be like, I'm your favorite, right? That's just, I just want to make sure that I'm the favorite, you know? And what do I have to do to be the favorite if I'm not? Okay, let's get it out. Let's work out the deal, because I want to be the favorite in the house. So
what is Doug doing that makes him your favorite? How can we change that?
Exactly. What do you need from me? I will get it for you. Okay. Okay. What's a completely ordinary thing that absolutely fascinates you?
History. well, to me, history is ordinary. But yeah, history just fascinates me. It's why I wanted to go into like religious studies. But yeah, it's just history. History just fascinates me. Why people do what they do.
Yeah,
And
for
looking
sure.
at through a historical lens.
I like research, so I think that has a lot to do with it, is because of the fascinating things I find out. But I dig doing any kind of research for things. So if you ever need research done, I'm just saying it's a thing. I like doing it. I like the forensics of it, you know, that part of the sciences. It's very interesting to me.
Well, and something we'll get here too, because I do like research as well, and I'm going to do a little bit of a government name drop here. So, government name drop. So because I like, and I will look up like the most random fact. If you mention something and I've never heard of it, I'll just go and do a deep dive into it.
Yeah.
So I've been given the nickname of Nicopedia.
That's a good one. That's good for you. It really is. Yeah, I love it. I love to deep dive into things and get lost in it for a while. Like yesterday, I started researching yo-yos and professional yo-yoers and stuff. It was pretty interesting. Let's see. If you had to relive one day from your past exactly as it happened, which day would you choose?
One day from my, okay. So, I'm gonna look this up. I'm gonna look something up. Let's jump to another question because I need to look up a building real quick.
Okay.
From my youth.
I'll tell mine, and then by that time you hopefully have found yours. Mine was January 1st, 2024, I think it was. It was just an ordinary New Year's Day. My husband and I were driving home from Arizona after leaving my daughter's house. But as we were driving, we literally hit every form of weather on the drive home. And it was just a really cool New Year's Day. It was beautifully sunny in Arizona. And then as we, hit the mountains, it started raining, and then it started sleeting, and then it started snowing. And it took us through the mountain pass to avoid traffic somewhere else, but that ended up getting us kind of snowed and stuck in this little mountain town. And I don't know, it was just a really cool New Year's Day. Hey Nick, hey student, Lizzie, Hanji, T-Rock, Ems, how you guys doing today?
All right. So mine is, this here is a Catholic church in my hometown.
Oh, let me expand you.
All right.
There we go.
So this is a Catholic church in my hometown, and I was a skater growing up, so you can see the shape of it, right?
Right.
Well, as you can see, this end here does not have any elevation or anything going to it, and this sits on the corner. So over here is an intersection, and I got this bright idea to where I'm going to go down this, hit here, go on the road, and then just shoot down the road. And I thought I was going to be fine. That's not what happened. I went down, hit this, got going faster than expected, and I launched across. And when I landed on the road in the intersection, right when I hit the road, there was a curb for the sidewalk, and I broke my leg.
Oh my God, Cyber, that is wild. How old were you about?
I was 14 when I did that.
Wow.
So if I could go back and relive another day, it would be to probably move over like 4 feet the other direction. Because I would still do it. It's not like I'm going back and saying I would never have done. No, I would totally do it again. I just make sure I was like 4 feet over the other direction.
That's hilarious. Okay, what's the strangest or most unexpected compliment you've ever received?
Say that one more time.
What is the strangest or most unexpected compliment you've ever received?
I would say it was when I first got onto TikTok. So I was on TikTok. I started out doing religious debates, and then I jumped over to the LGBTQIA plus side. And it's when you're first new on an app, and you're popping up on panels once in a while, giving advice, mainly from a Judaism point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you enter a live and somebody sees that you've entered the live, and then the chat just fills up with cybers here. That was something that is like, you don't expect, and it's just kind of like euphoric feeling that you get when that happens for the first time.
Yeah,
and
that's
people
pretty
like
cool.
recognize you. Yep.
That's really cool. My best compliment I had was one time my son's friend said to my son, "You make me want to be a better person." And as a mom, that was a compliment to me. I was like, it's awesome that somebody thinks that my son makes them want to be a better person. Like, that was just really cool to me. So
Yeah.
even though it wasn't really for me, it was. I'm taking it.
One of my most recent ones that I'm really grateful for is, so as you know, Justin, Dr. Blitz, and Ian run Unapologetic. And part of that team, they're the three main, but then you have Danny and myself. And, I'm really grateful that Justin trusts me that when he's not able to go live on it, that he'll shoot me a message and say, "Hey, are you available this Sunday? I'm not able to be on Unapologetic, and I want you to fill in for me."
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
That is a really
So this
awesome
Sunday,
compliment.
I'm going to be on Unapologetic this Sunday.
Oh, that's great. You guys see, you get breaking news with me, okay? So don't forget to go ring that bell over on YouTube so that you get notification right when it starts. Okay, let's see. If your life had a warning label, what would it say?
Oh, if I had a warning label, what would it say? Useless knowledge inbound.
Mine would just say laughs loud and often. So you just have to be ready for that. I can laugh so loud and it's obnoxious for me to hear it back. I hate it. Let's see. What's a food combination you love that other people find weird?
Oh. Food combination that I love that other people find weird. All right, so I have this thing. I like to get, whenever I get soda, I will get Pepsi. Well, it depends if I'm feeling for a more sweeter drink, or not, if it's Pepsi or Coke. But I'll put like a couple shots of coconut in it, a couple shots of vanilla in it, and then I'll put cream in it. And I don't know, I just like the way that tastes.
Oh, that sounds.
Pineapple. I put pineapple in it too.
Ooh, that sounds like a crazy little cocktail there. I don't really have any weird foods. Like, I'm just a basic bitch. You know what I'm saying? I like tacos. I think everybody does. There's nothing weird about the way I eat them or anything. So I don't know. I don't really eat weird food. I can't.
I'm the same way. Like if you make food for me, like I don't care if there's seasoning on. I'll eat it plain, and I'm still gonna think it's good. And it frustrates people because they'll be like, "Oh, what'd you think of the meal?" And I'll be like, "Oh, I thought it was good." And they'll be like, "Wait, do you want to season it better?" I'm like, I thought it was fine. And then I'll go over and they'll make it again, but they'll season it differently. And they'll be like, "So, what'd you think about it this time?" I'll be like, "Yeah, it was good." And it's like I'm basic, like.
Yeah. If you're gonna, you're gonna take the time to feed me, I'm gonna eat the food and I'm gonna enjoy it. But I don't eat weird food. Like, there's nothing I Like, I don't put mayonnaise on peanut butter or anything like that. I just don't, those things aren't interesting to me. If you had to give up the internet or coffee for a month, which would you choose?
Yeesh. I don't drink coffee that much, so let's replace that with Monster. I
Okay.
give up the internet.
Okay. I would give up coffee for a month. I would drink something else like hot chocolate every day or something. I don't know, but I would give up the coffee, but only for a month. I don't think I could do it longer than that. Let's see. And the last one, if you had a personal theme song that played every time you walked into a room, what would it be?
If I had a theme song. Oh man, that's a good one. I'm gonna go back to some Jewish roots. I think it would be Hava Nagila.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
it's a
I know
Jewish
that song. Yeah.
because I always try to stay positive. By nature, I'm a pessimist. Like I'm a pessimist. The glass is half empty for me. But I try, and I recognize that that's a weakness that I have. So I always try to look at the positive in things. I kind of have to force myself to it. And that song, kind of helps me remember to do that.
That's cool. That's really cool. I think the last time I answered this it might have been with Dugald yesterday. I think I said Laverne and Shirley's theme song, but I'm changing it today because I feel different today. It would be Morning by Al Jarreau. It's a very upbeat song. Hey sis, Magic, how are you? So I would probably do Morning by Al Jarreau. You guys,
If it has anything to do with the morning, you're getting a shoe thrown at you.
it does have to do with the morning. He's saying good morning to everything. It's a very upbeat song. You guys, it is your turn to come up and ask the questions. Do not be shy. The guest box is open. Come and ask Cyber your questions. You can ask him anything as long as it's not too personal. If he doesn't feel like answering your question, he doesn't have to. But if you want, you can come up and talk to him about Judaism, Mormonism, the Bible, history. He is a multifaceted guy. So come on up. And then in a little bit, we're going to play a game with Cyber. I made a special version of it just for Cyber. It's my game is Divine or Decline, but I made a special one just for you called Divine, Decline, or Design, and we'll play that a little bit later.
Hey,
Hey, how are you doing, Haitian?
excellent. I got a question for Cyber. Cyber, what's going on, brother?
I'm doing good. Yourself?
Excellent. Me as a mythicist, where do you stand with the existence of this so-called Jewish guy named Jesus?
Oh, I'm a mythicist as well.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
That makes.
Now, my follow-on question for you, though, so I do not buy into, like, the Roman conspiracy. I believe that it was just a mystery cult that, after the Bar Kokhba revolt, which was, the final Jewish-Roman war, with the Jews, with us being expelled from Judea, that we started mingling with these mystery cults, and we just kind of have an evolution into what is Christianity today.
Yeah, I would agree with that. With
the Jews, with us being.
Sorry about that. Did you guys have a feedback?
We did.
Oh, sorry about that. Had a screen.
So no, I do. Yeah, I do agree with you on that. Because I mean, yeah, all of those people were Hellenized Jews, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And so they took the syncretism, they took religious syncretisms from their culture and mixed it in with, some of the modern stuff that was going on at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. Now, some people do say that the Roman Catholic Church is responsible for bringing forth Christianity. Where do you stand with that?
You pay attention to Jaron from Christ Before Jesus?
Of course, I'm a big time follower. I haven't purchased this book, but yeah, I'm a big time follower.
Yeah, so I would take more of that stance that it probably came from like Asia Minor, from probably the area of modern day Turkey. It seems like all the evidence points to that's kind of where it started.
Right.
It probably started with Marcion's school of thought.
So you think Paul was inspired by Marcion, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Yeah, for sure. Well, a lot of Christians don't know who Marcion was and the Book of Evangeline, and they really don't know a lot of these things. Why do you think that is?
I think it's
In your humble
because-
opinion, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's after Marcion was deemed a heretic, and given that we have, this kind of mystery cult mixing with Judaism, I think that once we got to a point where like there was the Catholic Church or the early Catholic / Orthodox before the schism, I think they needed to bury this past, and it was much easier to do it by just burying Marcion and chalking Marcion to be an anti-Semite. And I think that was the best way to kind of squash both of them.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Now, let me ask you, what was going on in Constantinople, in modern day Turkey, in about 382, and all these councils? Because let me ask you something. Why are Christians so 10 toes down with this Isaiah prophecy? Where do you think that this Isaiah prophecy, not only 7:14, but Isaiah 53, where do you think that they get this notion or this concept? Because we know that Isaiah was written, obviously, in 3 different parts over 500 years.
Yep.
Proto-Isaiah, Deutero-Isaiah. I mean, so we know that there's 3 parts to it. So why do they think that it's, first of all, one author? Because there's 3 authors to that book. And then how is it that they haven't figured this out, man?
Well, I think it's that they know it. So the first thing to remember is that, like, the first question was about the councils.
Yeah.
So the
Right.
Council of Nicaea, which is like the big one that everybody knows, that you'll hear quoting, is where they came up with the canon that Jesus is divine, right? And the fact that this is happening in the 4th century, and that they still don't know that Jesus is divine, and they're having they're taking a vote on it, kind of shows that like the early Christians didn't necessarily view Jesus to be divine, and the way the story goes is it looked like it was possibly going to lean more towards like the Muslim view that he was just a prophet, and there was a bishop that was really talking about this. So Saint Nicholas, yes, Santa Claus, who was present, got up and went and slapped the sonic rings out of him.
I love that story. Jolly old Saint Nicholas just smacking the shit out of somebody.
Slapped him. And then, turns around and says, so was Jesus divine? And then they all voted that he was divine. And I just think that shows that all these councils are because essentially every church was doing their own thing. It's why, if you're a Christian, you look at, we have all the letters of Paul. This is Paul a lot of times correcting the church because they all had their own different schools of thought. There wasn't a set belief of what was going on. And so they had to unify under a set of beliefs. And so that's why we had the councils. And then when they go to use like Isaiah 14, we'll use that one first.
Well, the question I want to know is, where did this notion, like the author, who was responsible for saying, listen, Jesus is prophesied in the book of Isaiah, period, point blank. We're standing 10 toes down with this. Do you think that that was established more like in the councils of Constantinople of 381 or 382?
I don't know if it was necessarily councils that established that. They may have talked about them. But what I think it is that
Because isn't that the hill that they perish on, Christians? You know, they
Well,
want
no.
to perish on that hill, on the Isaiah hill.
well, a lot of Christians will, but most of them will look at the partial. They'll mainly focus on the prophecies within Matthew, and those are the ones that they mainly point to. And once those start to fall apart, and this is kind of where you get the dual meaning. Because again, if you've watched Justin's live, if you've watched my lives, or anybody that talks about prophecy, as soon as we start tearing them apart on the actual meaning, where we bring it into context, then they have to go and say, "Oh, but the dual meaning." But there's nothing that says there's dual meanings. So what if there's a triple meaning? What if there's a quadruple meaning? What if Justin riding in Jerusalem tomorrow on a donkey, and he accidentally falls off the donkey and hits a horse, and it makes him the Messiah, right? So it's just weird apologetics. And I think they started using like Isaiah and those ones because the ones that are presented in the Bible are just so easily dismantled. So they have to try to go to these other ones that are a little bit deeper in meaning, that have mistranslations, and it's easier for them to manipulate the words.
So, what are your thoughts on Pesherim and how Pesherim is used in the book of Isaiah? Because that's what the apologetics really falls back on. That Pesherim is how they interpret the book of Isaiah. What's your thoughts on that?
I just think they're just mistranslating it. They're not understanding the context, and Christians have this view that, because we know that Isaiah is talking about Babylon, and Revelations give this idea that today is modern day Babylon, and so I think we'll see a lot of this being put forth with some of the horrible understanding of Revelations.
I see. So Pesherim, we talked about that, and so Genesis, in your opinion, what was the author trying to convey in Genesis, saying that the grass came first before the sun? Do you think that there was like a typo there, or do you think that Moses really said that the sun existed before? The earth existed before the sun.
Yeah, I think when it was written is they just didn't have an understanding of how physics work. And so they were just trying to write it from their best understanding. They don't have a concept of photons come from the sun, light comes from the sun. They didn't know what photons were. So yeah, I would just say they just didn't have an understanding of how physics work or how it came in. So they were just trying to look at like, well, if the earth is the center of things, then the earth needed to be created first, and then everything came secondary.
Okay. And what is your understanding from sorry, I had a brain fart right here. What is your understanding from in Genesis as far as God resting on the sixth day? What does that mean, that he rested? Does it mean that God get tired? What do you think the author was trying to convey there?
I don't actually think that's the only time it says he rested. So I think that they're saying he gets tired, because if I'm not mistaken, they say it somewhere else too. Let me look that up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so, no, sorry, the question had slipped away from me. So would you agree, Cyber, that the first, the Canaanite pantheon was originally polytheistic?
Yes.
why is it that most people don't give pushback or don't know that information when you do tell them, when you do lay those facts out to them? Because obviously we see in the Old Testament that all of these different deities are mentioned.
I would say it's because the Canaanite religion has had no serious practice to it. For example, we look at like Greek mythology. Even today, we study Greek myths. At least in the United States, it's part of the curriculum in middle school, where you learn about the Greek gods. As far as from a literary perspective, in high school, you have to read some of this mythology. You read Shakespeare. But when it comes to like the Canaanite pantheon, and these other pantheons, as far as Babylon, Mesopotamia, and all these other pantheons, their religions are essentially dead, and we don't have a firm grasp or understanding of their mythologies. And I think also when we live in a Western world, to go out and teach these would just get a lot of pushback, especially since like when we're talking about Baal, who is an enemy to God in the Bible. I just think a lot of Christians would be like, no, we can't talk about Baal. That's a no-go. Can't do that. And so I think they're just dead religion that people just aren't interested in. And it's one of those things, and it's kind of the same thing with some of the scriptures that are in there. Like there's some of the scriptures that we bring up, and Christians have honestly never heard of these scriptures. How many times do Christians come into their lives and they'll say, I have read the Bible, and we'll say, oh, I have read it cover to cover, and we'll be like, oh, and we'll bring up a scripture and they'll be like, I've never heard of that, show it to me.
Yeah.
And we'll show it to them, and they've never heard of it. They're completely flabbergasted that it's in there.
Yeah.
Let me tell you guys really quick that of course the Bible does say in places that God does not get does not weary or whatever, but
Rest.
Psalm 132:14 says, this is my resting place forever, here I will reside, for I have desired it. So of course the Bible contradicts itself. There are places where obviously he rests, which would imply that he gets tired, and then there are other verses that say he does not weary. So there you have it.
And I think it's important to remember, and I get this a lot of time where people be like, well, why don't you debate like Judaism? To debate Judaism, you have to take the Mishnah Torah into account, the Talmud. And I'm not about to go out and spend a lot of money and go buy a full set of Talmud. That's a lot of books. But like in at least with the ancient Israelites literally believed that there was a dome. They believed that God's throne was on top of the dome. And they thought that God was like a person, right? So even in Judaism today, like God is not omni. He doesn't hold all. It's maximally. God is maximally these things. And that's really important, because it could be the case that there's something that God can't do. We just can't fathom it because we're human. We just can't fathom what he can't do. There could be something that he's just not capable of doing. But with the ancient Israelites, he was a person that resided in an area. This omnipresence didn't exist. He wasn't everywhere. And when they're talking about him being omnipresent, it's like he could just appear here, appear there, appear wherever he wants in any manifestation that he wants. And I think with him being like having this human-like characteristic, which again is indicative of any other pantheon. When we look at the Canaanite pantheons, we look at the Greek pantheons, the Egyptian pantheons, these deities have human-like characteristics, and getting tired is one of them. And so I think they literally mean like, yeah, God literally needed to rest.
So is the concept in Judaism, and I'm not sure, is the concept of Judaism that this God, he knows the future, or he can foretell the future, or no?
Does he foretell the future? So this is, you're going to get different ideas depending on who you ask. and what school you talk to. So you're going to get different views of this. So I would say that I don't rightly know the answer to that. I would say he is maximally knowing. So the potential there's something that he doesn't know, or there could be an interlocutor of something that we're able to do that he just didn't know. And we get some evidence of this in the Bible. We have a story in Jeremiah 19. This is in Topheth. And in Topheth, he is talking about how he's going to punish these people. He's going to turn them into cannibals by causing their city to be besieged because they started doing things and he wasn't aware of it. Right? He's like, I didn't even command them to do it. I didn't even know they were going to do that. I didn't even fathom it was possible, but they're doing these things. And then we have cases of him coming down to witness things. So I'd say that he's probably not necessarily all-knowing. At least that's what the scripture shows us.
Okay, because I was going to say, in Genesis, he says that he was proud of making man in his image and all that. And then a few chapters later, he laments it. So how do you lament something when you already knew it was going to make you lament it?
Well, that's what I'm saying is I personally don't think he was, and I don't think even up until the medieval ages, I don't think the Jews up through then. I think at least the Jewish thought of him being omniscient is a relatively new thing. I don't think it's something that's just been a historical thought. I think it's just been that he just isn't all knowing.
It's very much a Christian belief. You'll find 1 John 3:20. Whenever our hearts condemn us, for God is greater than our hearts, and He knows everything. It's also something about it in Matthew. Let's see. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father, and even the hairs of your head are all counted. So it's something more in the New Testament, which means it's going to be more a Christian theology.
So basically, where does this notion of God is omnipresent, omnipotent, omnibenevolent, all of these omnis, where does that school of thought stem from?
So that needs to be within Christianity. And I think this mainly comes from church fathers. I'd say Thomas Aquinas probably was one of the first philosophers to come up with this, is because one of the arguments that Christians use, so the whole idea of tag, if you ever listen to the tag argument, is that without God maintaining these omni properties, we have no way to base knowledge. So God is required to base knowledge.
Okay.
So Christians need him to have these omni properties. It is essential that he have these omni properties.
Wow. And so you would think St. Thomas of Aquinas was the first one to come up with this school of thought?
I don't think he was the first one, but I think he was the first one to put this to philosophy.
Because it's never mentioned in the Bible at all. In any of the scriptures does it mention that he's omnipresent and omnibenevolent and all of the omnis. Or I could be wrong, Crystal. What do you think?
I'm going to look up omnipresent. We know that it says he is love, so that's where they get the omnibenevolent. We know that it says he is all-knowing, because I just told you some of the scriptures for Christians. So let's see if there's anything on omnipresence in the Christian scriptures, or at least that they twist to mean that, Dugold, welcome to the stage. Did you have something you wanted to talk? But actually, before we go on, really quick, you guys, please keep tapping that screen. Let's get to 10,000 likes as quickly as possible. Don't forget, I do have a gift goal. They're only 1 coin each. So if you have coins, please send up I think they're the little pink hearts. And also make sure that you are gifting Cyber Deconstruction. He's my special guest tonight. And Dugold, welcome to the stage. What do you got for us tonight?
Hey guys, I wanted to ask Cyber the same question I tried to ask last night.
Oh,
when we
yeah.
had some of the other Bible experts in. I am fascinated by this because it came up on Thinkers Live. Sorry, I'm being chauffeured, so don't think I'm like
Okay.
driving. But they were talking about Lilith last night or yesterday morning, I think it was. They were talking about Lilith and like her various characteristics outside of the Bible and like the non-canonical texts and whatever. And it struck me. To me, she sounds very much like an amalgamation of the Canaanite goddess Anat mixed with either, I'm thinking like Ishtar or maybe even Athena. And I'm just curious, Cyber, what you thought. Just from the characteristics I was getting from the stories they were talking about with her.
Yeah, could you expound on that just a little bit? I wasn't in the live. Could you expound on it a little bit more?
Basically, they were talking about like how just her characteristics outside of the Bible and the stories that are non-canonical, like the fact that she was very strong-willed, the fact that she like apparently at one point she flew out of the garden, like she had godlike powers almost. She was somewhat divine in the ways that she was, because some theories even that she was a goddess that was forced to be with Adam. Whole bunch of stuff they were talking about in general, but just the overall characteristics sounded very much like a mix of a not mixed with somebody else. And I was just curious what you thought.
I'm kind of agnostic on Lilith, because even like within the Jewish folklore, like you'll get some thoughts that Lilith was Adam's first wife. This is in some folklore and stuff. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, because like the contemporary belief is like the reason why we end up with two Jewish stories, or not two stories in Genesis, is one, and people will view them as like contradictory, but one is like just an overview. We're going to throw these out. We're going to note that there's 7 days and the earth is created. And then in second Genesis, when we get a retelling of it, this is when it's like, okay, now we're going to order it. And so like for atheists, when we're looking at it from an atheist view, look at the plain reading, you'd be like, yeah, that's a contradiction. But once you get into it, so I don't think the Bible itself actually, like Genesis specifically, supports Lilith. I think
No, I don't think the Bible does at all either. I was just talking about the outside of the Bible, since we know that she's not even really technically in it. I was just curious what you thought, since she's out there in the ether of folklore and whatnot. I was just curious.
Yeah, she pops up in Midrash and stuff like this. I think she does do a good view of women empowerment. I think she's a strong view of women empowerment based on other folklore and stuff like that. So I think it's important to learn about her. I think it is with that, but then again, in other folklore, she's viewed as a demon who steals babies. Like even like the Jewish folklore has like contradictory stories on it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what some of the stuff they were talking about, like, because there's some perspectives where she's like supposedly one of the goddesses in the pantheon of Canaan that somehow was being forced into being with Adam. There were some people talking about perspectives of where she was his first wife, but she was given more abilities than he was given, which is why she was able. The guest she had also talked about at one point, there was a story about her literally growing like bird-like wings and just flying out of the garden. So the more they described her, it just sounded like she was two different goddesses mixed up in one, that kind of thrown in there.
Yeah, well, and the important thing too is something that I don't think that a lot of people understand is like, so we have in Judaism we have like what's called midrash. Midrash is not like things that happen. They're like parables. They're like stories that explain a point. And they may use real people, possibly real events, but they explain a narrative. They teach a lesson. And so a lot of people that don't understand, they'll read about these and they'll be like, oh, they actually believe in this Lilith character. And it's like, well, no, not really. It's just midrash.
Yeah, no, she's totally an offshoot, like non-canonical character. To me, she's kind of like fan fiction. because she's not in the actual books, but I still found it a very interesting because just the descriptors I was getting from the various stories this person was talking about, it just sounded so much like those older gods that had just been kind of like Yahweh was just a mix of a whole bunch of older gods that he shouldn't have been a mix of. You know what I mean?
Yep.
All right, I was just curious what your thoughts were. All right, appreciate
You
y'all.
can hang out with
But yeah,
us
but
if you
that's why
want,
I-
Dugal. Feel free to stay
Okay.
up if you want. If you guys are in the chat right now and you have a question, maybe you're shy, don't feel like coming up, just go ahead and ask in the chat. We'll go ahead and read it to Cyber. There are some comments over on YouTube, but they're not really questions. John Paul was saying that the one in Isaiah uses the word Alma, which does not mean virgin. It's about King Ahaz and the child Emmanuel. I think the gospel writers did try to actually make this a prophecy by writing in Luke. The Bible seems sort of reverse engineered. And then he goes on to say Aquinas supported slavery and killing heretics. He also is not a philosopher, he's a theologian. It goes on to say Exodus 25 says he is jealous, and Jesus sounds a lot like Dionysus. I'm going to answer the one question we had earlier. Does the Bible say God is omnipresent? In Psalms 139, 7 through 10, it says, where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. So that would be a place for sure that Christians would say he is omnipresent.
Yep. And what's important about and so Isaiah 14, that person on YouTube, that shows us, that's how we know that Matthew was utilizing the Septuagint, because Parthenos is the word that's used there. And at the time of its writing, the Septuagint Parthenos could have meant either virgin or young woman. Usually it just referred to a young woman. We do have the story of Dinah, after she's been great, being referred to as a Parthenos. So clearly it's not meaning virgin in that case in the Septuagint.
Yeah.
But by time we get to the New Testament time period, the first century or around antiquity, during that time period, Parthenos had almost exclusively just meant virgin by that time period. And so that's how we know that Matthew didn't understand the actual Hebrew text. He wasn't reading the Hebrew text. He wasn't going to the temple to study, because he would have known the difference. And in the Hebrew, the actual word that is used there is ha-alma. That ha in front means like the young woman, meaning that like, and it's ha-alma-hara, meaning she is currently pregnant. And then we learn in the next chapter it was Isaiah's wife. So why Christians run to that is just goofy to me.
Gray Eyes also says in the TikTok chat, depending on the Bible version, Lilith is sometimes mentioned in Isaiah 34:14. I did not know.
I believe that is true. 34, 14.
Yeah.
So it does, even in the NRSV, it does say, wildcats shall meet with hyenas, goat demons shall call to each other, there also Lilith shall repose, to find a place to rest.
Oh, wow. King James takes her out for sure. Wild cats shall meet with hyenas, and wild goats shall cry to their kind. Indeed, there the night birds shall settle and find a place to rest.
So somebody, Lizzie just asked, what are my thoughts of the book Under the Banner of Heaven and the Order of the LDS Church? I think Joseph Smith was a creeper dude, who it's during the great revival of religion. People are super excited. He's living in a small town. His family, if you study much about Joseph Smith, His family had actually been in trouble before because they were kind of known as like frauds concerning treasure seeking. In fact, they hadn't been in Palmyra that long because they kind of had to move there or move away from where they were because of his older brothers and their, treasure hunting. So yeah, the whole early church with the Mormons, it's a fraud, it's a sham. It was just Joseph Smith and his family trying to grab a quick buck.
Cyber, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know that several names in the book are mentioning other gods as well, but are all the angel names, are those other gods too that used to be other gods, or are those some of those actually made up for this specific, for Christianity itself?
The Christian ones are just made up.
Okay.
I believe that there's some of them that might be based. So what my belief is, so we have Mesopotamia. We learned that Abraham was from Ur of Mesopotamia. Do I think Abraham actually existed? Probably not. But we learned that he's from Mesopotamia. Now, Sumeria was one of the biggest civilizations within Mesopotamia. And so I think that what we have with Judaism is we have a change from the Mesopotamian religions going into what is rabbinic Judaism today. When it comes to the tribes of Israel and why we ended up with the schism. Oh, you got some background noise.
Hold on.
And what I think ended up, and I don't believe that like the tribes of Israel all came from Israel. I believe that they were probably nomadic Canaanite tribes that united under a person, probably under two, and that with this we have a polytheistic belief, and probably one of the tribes. Man, we could probably say his name was Moses. Do I think like he's like the Moses as presented in the Bible? Probably not. But I believe that there was probably a man that was monotheistic, and he really wanted to push for monotheism. And so they started pushing out the Canaanite gods. But I think when we read about the split of Israel, and we have Judah and Ben staying in the south, and the other tribes going to north, and we keep hearing about this Baal and these other gods, I think that's ultimately what caused that division, was that not all of the now newly formed, newly united Israelites were on board with monotheism. I don't think they're all on board with it. And those who wanted to continue worshiping the Canaanite pantheon ended up moving to form the northern kingdom of Israel.
So you're saying that's kind of when Yahwehism started taking hold?
I believe so, yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting. Because I know you see crosses of the Canaanite gods showing up in there, like the Asherah poles and the all that kind of stuff, and in some of the angel names. But I was just curious if any of that carried over to the Christian ones, because those always sounded very strange to me. They never sounded right.
Yep. And that's why you'll always hear, like, whenever the Israelites are going astray, they always kind of, you get this little, that damn Baal is getting a hold of you guys again. I think it's because whoever is, like, in charge of documenting these, or whatever scriptures were ultimately chosen to become the quote-unquote Tanakh, the Jewish scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, whoever was ultimately responsible for that wanted to wipe away the Canaanite gods and take away that history. And so that's where we see like the Yahwehism coming in and the damning of Baal and the Canaanite gods. That's why we get that damnation of it.
Sounds like Baal was the original Satan figure getting all the flack.
Yeah, he's kind of painted to be like the enemy of Yahweh.
That's what it sounds like. Even he kind of gets wrapped up into Yahweh later on. I just think that's weird.
Cyber, we have a question over on YouTube. John Paul says, I'm pretty sure Mary wasn't a virgin for obvious reasons, but also the Gospel of James, I think, mentions Jesus had brothers and sisters. Gnostic Gospel. Does Cyber know much about the Gnostic Gospels?
I know a little bit about them. One of my favorite Gospels, though, is the infancy Gospel of Thomas. Because Jesus unalives some kid. So I want you to imagine, you got like some kid at the beach. If you've ever been to the beach, you know, you build like little sand castles. And then when the water comes in, you watch it like go around your sand castle and stuff. So Jesus is essentially doing that. He's like playing in the water and he purifies the water. And then this other kid steps in his puddle. And then Jesus looks at him and unalives the kid. He just straight up like unalives the kid. And you're like, what the heck?
I've not read that one. Damn.
I need to read that.
Yes, the infancy Gospel of Thomas. It's about 2 pages long. It's fairly short. And there's also a story on there. So if you've had kids, especially if you've had like a few kids, you know what it's like when, or if you yourself have siblings, you know what it's like when you accidentally get a little rough with one of your kids and you're like, hey, don't tell mom and dad. Don't tell mom and dad. You're like trying to baby them and pamper them so they don't tattle on you. Well, again, in the infancy Gospel of Thomas, there is a situation where they're up with Jesus and he's like 8 years old and they're up on the roof of a house and this kid falls off the roof. It talks about how one of the other kids pushed him off the roof and he unalived. And then the kids scattered. The kids all ran away, leaving Jesus there by himself. And the parents of this kid come up and they see their child is unalived. And they look up and they see Jesus up on the roof and they start blaming him. So Jesus like jumps off of the roof. Imagine like this superhero landing.
Like
And
Spider-Man.
yes, and then he stands up and he's like, I didn't do this. And they're like saying, yes, you did. So he resurrects the kid and is like, hey, I resurrected you. Tell them I didn't push you off the roof. Tell them I didn't do that. And then he's like, no, you didn't hurt me. You resurrected me. So it's this whole classic like, shh, don't tell mom. Don't tell mom. Go tell mom I didn't do this. Like, so the infancy Gospel of Thomas is like my favorite apocryphal gospel out there. It's hilarious.
That's amazing.
I've always wondered, like, I know there was a council. I know that the early church fathers decided what went in the Bible and what didn't. But I always wondered, like, what really went through their brains when they were picking and choosing these books and leaving some out? Like, what was the real, actual process for this?
Yeah.
I think what it came down to is when they were trying to decide to pick the canons, they'd already started to have some schisms. I mean, Marcion had already been deemed a heretic, and they already had to go through destroying his books. With Marcion's books, we do not have a single surviving copy of it at all. Not a single copy of it survived. There's no manuscripts. The only reason why we have reconstructions of it is because the church fathers hated him so much that they talked about what he talked about. So we get reconstructions of his writings, but we don't have any that survived. And I think because of that, they had to be very selective with what they put in. Because some of these gospels, as they go on, they get more and more bombastic. Like one of the gospels literally has Jesus, like he is born, and then he's immediately standing up and giving a sermon. Like these stories just get wilder and wilder. So
I picture Stewie from Family Guy, little Stewie Jesus, just standing there preaching to everybody.
Oh my God, I can't even.
Yeah. So I think you froze. You froze.
Hopefully I'll unfreeze here in a minute.
But yeah, so you get this Jesus, the Gospels get more and more bombastic. And so I think they had to draw a line over, okay, how can we show that he is God, but we can't make it too unbelievable? Like they had to like draw a line. And another important thing to remember too is that these books were never intended for us to read as lay people. They were always intended to have the clergy read them to us. And you were never given an opportunity to like fact check it. In fact, it was illegal to own copies of scripture.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I knew that it was always the preachers that taught them, but I didn't know that it was always that they weren't even allowed to own their own copies of.
Yeah, that was in fact, that was one of Martin Luther's like big issues was the people need to be able to verify these scriptures themselves. It's ridiculous.
Now, I find it very strange that they try to destroy all of Marcion's writings and stuff, right? But yet they kept all of Paul's letters. Wasn't Paul just the front for Marcion's cult?
Well, so what I think they did, because if you read Paul's letters, so Marcion did not like the Old Testament. So if you ever study Marcion, he did not like the Old Testament. Marcion's belief was that Yahweh was a demiurge, right? That he was evil and that he was this horrible thing, and that there was another deity named God the Father, and that God the Father sent his son down to save us from Yahweh. And so when you read that, and you know much about Marcion, Marcion was not a fan of the Old Testament, did not believe in the Old Testament, didn't acknowledge the Old Testament. But Paul in his letters points back to the Old Testament quite a bit. And so when you read that, you'd be like, well, if this is Marcion, this is Marcion's school, these are Marcionites, why are they pointing back to the Old Testament? It's because the church fathers edited Paul's letters.
So they took what they could salvage from Marcion's stuff, slapped Paul's name on it, and made some edits.
Correct. And in fact, if you talk to Jaron with Christ Before Jesus, when you look at the pastorals were probably Polycarp. They're probably written by Polycarp.
Interesting. I knew most of it was all anonymously written, and I knew most of it was fronts for various other speakers, like Paul for Marcion, so on and so forth. I didn't realize it was all that widespread where Polycarp was one too. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and I say probably because we don't know if Polycarp actually did his own writings. We don't even know if Polycarp actually existed, but it seems to be that whoever is attributed for writing Polycarp probably wrote the pastorals.
Huh. That is fascinating. Like, I already was blown away when I realized that Paul wasn't necessarily a real person, but
yeah,
that's
I was really blown away with that too. Hey, John Paul over on YouTube says, John and Mark are just as credible as most of the other ones. The Gospel of Judas basically said that Jesus needed Judas to betray him. It seems this was taken out so that Christians could blame the Jews for deicide. You guys keep tapping that screen and sharing out the live. And don't forget, I have a gift goal of 333 of the hearts. They're just 1 coin each. If you can, please send them up to me. I did have a subway going, but I didn't want to interrupt the conversation. But I am looking for 3 more subs to get to the 5 today. So if you haven't subscribed, please think of doing so today. It's less than a cup of coffee a month. I'm sorry, gentlemen. Go right ahead with your discussion. I just thought I'd add in what John Paul, because he's got a lot to contribute over on YouTube. And I appreciate that. You guys, the guest box is open too. If you want to come up, guest box is open. Come on up.
Yeah, and so that's something that that he brings up is like so Luke. If we go look at Luke chapter 2, well, we can look at some things. Some things that I like to point out is, so in the birth stories, when we look at like Matthew chapter 2, which has a birth story, it talks about Herod the Great being the king of Judea. Now, we know that it was Herod the Great because later on down in the chapter when they're coming out of Egypt, it talks about his this Archelaus is king. And Joseph didn't like Archelaus. That's why it says he ended up in Nazareth. Archelaus was the son of Herod the Great, and there wasn't another Archelaus Herod. That didn't exist. It was only the one. So Herod the Great passed away in 4 BCE. But then when we read in Luke, and I always butcher this guy's name, Quinoris, however you pronounce his name, I always butcher it. In Luke 2, he was the governor of Syria at around 5-6 CE. There's a 10-year gap there in the birth stories between Matthew and Luke. There's a 10-year gap there. And you'll hear them where they'll try to say like, oh, well, he was governor twice. No, he was governor once. The other time that he was in Syria, he was serving as under Gaius Caesar, who was Octavian Augustus' grandson, as an advisor. So during that time, he was not in a position to actually order a census. He couldn't do it because only the governor can order that. Mm-hmm. So like we have a 10-year gap here that doesn't make sense. Luke also states in chapter 1, he's talking about how he's writing to a most excellent Theophilus. Now, keep in mind, Luke is estimated, you know, when you talk about when they think it was written, between 60 to 80. That's when Luke is, you know, they think it was written. But Theophilus, there's only 2 Theophiluses that we know of in history. One was the high priest, but he stopped being the high priest in 41. The only other Theophilus is in the 2nd century, and that was Theophilus of Antioch. And so, like, when you actually pay attention to characters in the Bible, in the New Testament, you realize that these characters don't make sense until we place it in the 2nd century. Then these characters suddenly start making sense.
Yeah. And that has a lot to do. I mean, like, that's part of what Jaron and Matt talk about in Christ Before Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
John Paul also said, I heard Bart Ehrman and Christopher Hitchens talk about the birth contradictions. Most apologists just say there was a time skip, which doesn't make any sense, is what he said.
No. So usually, yeah, the biggest apologetics that I hear with
Joyful got taken down, you guys.
Oh no.
Sorry.
Hopefully, he's been on his backup. Well, he's been on his backup, so. Oh man, Joyful. Like, let's put LTT in chat. But no, it's yeah, and what you'll get with that one specifically is, one, you'll get people that'll go down the rabbit hole and they'll dig and they'll be like, oh well, it shows here that that Quirinus was in Syria twice, and you'll be like, yeah, but the first time he was as an assistant. He wasn't the governor, and we know that from Tacitus. Tacitus is the one who tells us that. So, like, we have that. So he wasn't in a position to do that. Or they'll just throw in, like, they'll be like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. What does a 10-year gap matter? Why the story's still there. The birth story is what matters. We don't care what time it took place. So they'll just either dismiss it, or they'll do they'll try to do the argument from silence. They'll say, well, just because we don't have evidence that he wasn't the senator there at the time, you know. So the apologetics are just wild. And
what's your least favorite apologetic argument?
Isaiah 53.
Be specific. Tell me what it is. What do they apologize for there?
So Isaiah 53 is the one where they try to say that, like, oh, look, it's prophesying of Jesus, mainly in verse 5. Verse 5 states that he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities, right? But if they actually go and they read the Hebrew, they'll realize that there is a mem in there, and the m, when used as a prefix, turns the whole word into from and not for. So it's just a gross mistranslation that Christians don't ever care to go back and look at. And whenever we look at, like, Isaiah 41, 43, 44, 45, 48, 49, these all make it clear that the suffering servant is Israel. Like it says, you, Jacob, my servant Israel. And it'll say something like in that effect. And for some reason, they just apologize 53 specifically to be about Jesus. And there's no reason for it. There's like no reason for it.
My least favorite is the entire story of Job.
Oh my God, yes.
Wait. Like trying to use it to prove Christianity?
Whenever they use it and they try to apologize it away, like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, that was meant to be, to teach about faith. And it's like, no. It's not what it
Head
was.
north. In 500 feet, take the ramp.
Well, and that's the thing, too.
Oh no, go ahead, Cyber.
Yeah, I was going to say, here's the wild thing is, so we have with Job, we have it in the garden because a lot of Christians think that the serpent was Satan, right? They think it was Lucifer. So we have Job, Genesis, and then we have another verse where I have to go find the scripture, but it's where God sends evil spirits to torment Saul. And Christians take this like weird stance where God cannot be in Lucifer's presence, right? He can't be. But again, Lucifer was in the garden. If the garden was perfect, why was Lucifer in there to begin with, right? So usually whenever Christians bring up Lucifer in the garden, I never say, no, that wasn't Lucifer. I just grant that for them because they have to explain how the garden was perfect with Lucifer in the garden. They then have to explain that.
I've asked about that a few times because I've noticed that they're like, oh, he can't be around sin. He can't be around sin. He can't be around sin. But I'm like, but he was. He was around it often if you're talking about Satan.
Yeah.
I mean, he was around Satan when he was talking about Job, supposedly, when he was talking to him about him. He was with him around when the garden was there. He's always around sin. He don't care about sin.
When Jesus started his ministry, he went out into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights.
Yep.
And that's when we have Lucifer transferring it, like doing like Goku instant transmission all over the place, trying to tempt him.
I always thought that was a strange thing to tell people because it's like he's around it all the time. I mean, he was physically present throughout the Old Testament all the time.
Yep. Now the Jewish answer to this is Satan is just an adversary. It could be an angel that's just there for the sole purpose of tempting people. The tempting comes from God. But
to me, God assigns that title every time he gives a new angel a test to me.
Yeah. But Christians, have to hold that he's Lucifer. So it's like, yeah, I'll grant Lucifer. The garden wasn't perfect then because there was evil in the garden. It wasn't perfect.
John Paul over in YouTube.
I gotta drop.
Okay, Dougal, thanks for coming up. You guys, don't forget, all of you who joined us, thank you for coming. The guest box is open. If you have a question for Cyber Deconstruction, remember, you might hear some noise right now. My daughter is cooking me a lovely dinner while we talk, so you might hear her in the kitchen. Anyway, he is like so knowledgeable about Judaism, the Bible, and the Book of Mormon, and he's now studying the Quran. So there is so many things you can come up and talk to him about. I'm going to read to you what John Paul said over on YouTube. He said, my least favorite arguments are when Christians misquote science or do God of the gaps fallacies, or when they talk about objective morality. You can enjoy your Bible fairy tales, but don't give children a poor education. I agree 100%. I'm sorry if you're having a problem with lagging. I am on YouTube and Twitch. Lag comes from using TikTok Studio to stream, and that it's all I can do. It's all I can do. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I do gotta change my mind though, Dougal. I apologize. My least favorite apologetic is the nuh-uh.
Yes, true. And you get that a lot. Like, nuh-uh, it's not in there. Nuh-uh. It's not that kind of slavery. Nuh-uh.
Yep.
Well, you know, while we're waiting for guests, we're going to play our game. You guys, if you want to play at home, it's a lot like whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter. So, anyway, this game is called Divine, Decline, or Design, okay? And let me go back a bit because where is it? Where is it? I have some questions for you, okay? Now, if it's divine, it's from the Bible. If it's decline, it's from the Quran. And if it's design, it's Book of Mormon, okay? So you have to tell me divine, decline, or design. And you guys can play in the chat, okay? So first one up. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Oh. Sounds like Book of Mormon.
It is the Holy Bible. That's Psalms 23:1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Okay, the next one up is, so that was divine. And we have certainly honored the children of Adam and carried them on the land and sea and provided for them of the good things.
Quran?
Oh, very good. This is decline. It's from the Quran. Very good. That's Quran, Surah Al-Isra 1770. I hope I said that right. Okay, number 3. Adam fell that men might be, and men are that they may have joy.
That's Book of Mormon.
That's correct. That's design. Book of Mormon, 2 Nephi 2:25. How are you guys doing in the chat and over on YouTube? I see you're playing on YouTube too. Yeah, the Quran and the Book of Mormon steal from the Bible, so it could get tricky. You never know. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord.
Oh, sorry, Bible. That's divine.
Correct. That's divine. That is Romans 6:23. Number 5. And indeed, we created man, and we know what his soul whispers to him, and we are closer to him than his jugular vein.
Oh, that is Quran. That is definitely Quran.
That is Quran. That is decline. That is Surah Qaf 50:16.
Quran has this like infatuation with human anatomy.
Yeah, they do. They really do. Okay. Yea, come unto Christ and be perfected in him and deny yourselves of all ungodliness.
Bible?
That is the Book of Mormon. That's design, and that's in Moroni. Do you say Moroni or Moroni? What do you say?
It's Moroni.
Moroni.
So, I was thinking Bible because... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Moroni 10:32. Go ahead.
I should have known because the entirety of the book of... So a lot of the Book of Mormon was plagiarized from Isaiah.
Yeah.
Utilizing the King James Version. So I'm like... Is this something that's taken from Isaiah? Are you using the ye? Are you switching up?
I know.
KJV on me?
No, and I tried not to get any paraphrased quotes either when I did it because it makes it harder when it's paraphrased on top of it. So, okay. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
Quran?
That is the Bible. That's divine, and that can be found in Matthew 5:9. Everybody's saying these are hard. Maybe I made them a little too hard tonight. Okay, let's see. And whoever puts his trust, this one, you're going to know right away. This one's too easy. And whoever puts his trust in Allah, then he will suffice him.
That's Muhammad. Peace be upon him.
Yes, that's the Quran, Surah At-Talaq 65:3. Woe unto the liar, for he shall be thrust down to hell.
Woe unto the liar. That's Book of Mormon.
Yes, that is. That's the Book of Mormon, 2nd Nephi 9:34. And the last one, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows.
Oh, Bible James, I believe.
It is Bible. It's Galatians 6:7. Galatians 6:7. You guys, if you have questions for Cyber, come on up or ask them in chat. I'll be happy to read them out to him. I hope you guys had fun playing Divine, Decline, or Design. Usually it's Divine or Decline only, but I had to make it a little different for Cyber because he's studying the Quran right now. I'm so surprised that Christ before Jesus or Ems isn't here to pick on you and ask you a question. Because I saw them both pop in at some point. So, now, are you working on a book, Cyber? Are you writing a book right now, too?
I am not writing a book. I should write a book.
You really should.
I should. No, I'm not writing a book. One of the things that I really enjoy is actually helping other creators. When am I converting to? I was married to a Mormon for 8 years. I am not converting.
My YouTube channel is I am CrystalJae, all one word, and Crystal CrystalJae. I am CrystalJae. The link is in my bio. Also, if you'd like to support the live, you can do so by sending gifts, of course. I cannot get super chats yet. I need to get 500 subscribers. So the easiest way you can help the channel is for you to subscribe to my YouTube. The link is in my bio. And there's also links to my PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo. Supporting the channel helps me to be able to bring more creators on and let you ask them the questions on Decon Q&A with CrystalJae. Keep doing all your good things. Keep sharing out the live. Thank you for helping me reach my gift goal. Thank you for the new subbies and the new followers. I really appreciate you. So have you been working with, not working with so much, but have you gotten to have a little bit more firsthand knowledge of Jaren's second book? Are you getting a little, sneak peek on some of that?
I do once in a while. He'll send me messages when he finds some interesting stuff. I haven't really done a deep dive into like the Islamic community and stuff. But he'll shoot me little messages about things that he finds super interesting, and then he'll deep dive with me on it, and it's super interesting. Some of the things that Jaren and Matthew are finding out are just amazing. One of them is so there was this. So the idea is that Joseph Smith, his family, each member of his family came from a different religion, and it was during the Great Revival, and people were beginning to be really worried because he wasn't baptized yet, and you got to be baptized to be saved. And he was starting to be pestered about joining a church, so he goes out into the woods and he prays, and God the Father and Jesus Christ appear to him. Because in Mormon theology, the Godhead are three different individuals, and God is like a title. It's just a title. So they all share the title of God, and they're three distinct individuals. And God said, hey, I'm God. This is my son, Jesus Christ. Hear him. And Jesus said, hey, don't join any of the churches. I'm going to use you as an instrument. And then later on, he was visited by an angel Moroni. If you ever have seen a Mormon temple, the golden statue on top of every Mormon temple, that's Moroni.
Okay.
Yep. And the reason why it's called the Book of Mormon is the person who compiled it was named Mormon, and Moroni is Mormon's son. Moroni hid the Bible, or hid the golden plates.
Oh, okay.
And so Moroni took him to a place called Cumorah. You'll hear it called Hill Cumorah.
Okay.
However, it turns out that there is an island named Cumorah, and there's like some stuff going on there. So it's like Joseph Smith just found a place on the map and said, that looks cool.
Yeah. Now, didn't it have something to do with he liked pirates and stuff too, or something?
Oh, yes. This Cumorah place is where Captain Kidd apparently had hidden his treasure, was rumored to have hidden his treasure.
Before Everlasting Godstopper asks you a question, John Paul over on YouTube said, can Cyber talk about how the Book of Adam, I believe in the Book of Mormon, originally had nothing to do with Adam until he butchered the translation. And then he goes on to say, one day I want to write a book similar to Christopher Hitchens' God is Not Great, but focus on American history and American politics. But anyway, what about the Book of Mormon having a Book of Adam that wasn't really about the Adam or something? Do you know about that?
Well, so there's no Book of Adam, and what I'll do, let me turn my green screen off here real fast, because this is actually really interesting. So in the Book of Mormon, so these set of scriptures that you'll use, I took these through school. They contain the Bible plus the Book of Mormon. And so the Book of Mormon only makes up. So this part here that I have up, that's the Book of Mormon, right? And then they have another set of scriptures that they call the Doctrine and Covenants. So this is the Doctrine and Covenants. These are like modern day revelations that Joseph Smith received. And then they have a third book that they call the Pearl of Great Price, which is like their smallest book. And the Pearl of Great Price contains the books of Moses and Abraham. And the way the story goes is that, because again, this is also during the time of Egyptology. We're finding all these tombs in Egypt. And
I am so sorry. My cat just decided to jump up on top of everything. I'm so sorry. Go on.
But there was this traveling mummy exhibit, and it had some papyri. So this is one, the papyrus here. Another one that was used was this. This was another one that they bought. And then there was this one. And through these papyri manuscripts, he was able to get the books of Abraham and the books of Moses. And these things go on, and this is kind of where, like, you'll get the idea of this place called Kolob. Kolob is like a star, and it's next to this star is the planet that God lives on. Mormons believe in exaltationism. So they believe that if you live righteously enough, you'll be exalted and you will become a god.
Okay.
And then you'll be able to create. So they believe that God was once human like we are. But turns out that these texts are actually from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. They're buried with almost every mummy that they found. They'll have some version of these. And yeah, it's just fake. And I am convinced that if Joseph Smith could have afforded the mummy as well, he would have been saying he had Abraham. Like, I think he'd been like, look, Abraham, this is Abraham.
Okay. He actually, John Paul said, oh, I'm sorry, I believe I was thinking of the Book of Abraham. So he was thinking of the Book of Abraham.
Yep. And it is the case that, and there's some things that differ. Like, let me get up to the Book of Abraham, see if we can find, because you got the Book of Moses, and so it talks about how, like, he was being persecuted by false priests in Chaldea, and then Jesus saves him, but there's like no evidence of this ever happened. And yeah, it's just like this weird thing. And they have this thing here. This is kind of where they believe like humans come from. And so it'll use like in verse 22, now the Lord has shown unto me, Abraham, the intelligences that were organized before the world was. And among all these, there were many of the noble and the great ones. So they believe that like before we came down to earth, we were what was called intelligences. It was like our pre-mortal existence. Like they just got this weird theology.
Everlasting, how are you tonight? Thank you for waiting, and I appreciate you.
I'm good. Thanks
Did you
for
have
having me.
something you wanted to ask Cyber tonight?
I did. I've got a question for him and a question for you also.
Okay.
Actually, I'll just ask you quick. Where in Kansas are you from?
Oh, I lived in Derby,
I grew-
Kansas.
Oh my
I thought it
God.
was somewhere over the rainbow.
I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and I actually had the Pentecostal side of my family lived in Derby. I spent most of my childhood in Derby.
Okay, my kids grew up in Derby. I went to Derby Friends Church. So you probably know where that is. If you know
I do.
Derby.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Derby Panthers.
Yes.
It's the high school there.
Yes.
Yeah,
That house that's right next to the high school there. I think that I can't remember the photographer that used to own it. My best friend owns that house now. So yeah, right there by the field.
Yeah. Yeah, I left in like the 80s. I think I left in around 90 is when I left there. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
so
when
that
I
was my
that's when I
question.
went
Yeah.
out there was in the 90s. Once
My
my
family was
second was born.
the Masters.
Oh,
The
okay.
name of my family was Masters, and they were Pentecostal preachers. Yeah. So, anyhow, so my Cyber, a funny thing, real quick. The live that you just left. As soon as you left, this guy jumped on. The guest jumped on, and he was a Mormon, and he kept bringing up Mormon. And I said, "Careful! If you say Mormon too many times, Cyber will just magically manifest into the live."
Oh man! So I've known Emily. I've known Emily for quite a while. Emily is new to the deconstruction space, so she's just getting her feet wet. So anybody that can hop up and help Emily, definitely. But
Yeah, I jumped in there right after you left, and
and
it was a good conversation.
Oh, you-
So my question for
go
you
ahead. Yep.
is about, like, I think I heard you talking about like an anachronism with the term rabbi being used being applied to Jesus in the Gospels, when and the anachronism I'm assuming is being that rabbinical Judaism didn't take place really until the 2nd century, right?
Correct.
But the word itself, was that word used in the 1st century?
No, it wasn't
It
used
wasn't.
until correct. So what you would have is you'd have sages, which utilizes a completely different Hebrew word. Doesn't even sound like rabbi. And so that is what they would have been referred to as. And then after the fall of the temple, the sages took on the name rabbi, as well as did like the Pharisees. They took on the names of rabbi instead. So anytime you hear rabbi, it is to rabbinic Judaism, which did not start until the fall of the temple.
Which kind of indicates that an author that wasn't in that time and place in the 1st century would be using a term like rabbi to describe events in the 1st century, having not known the area, like Greek writers, in other words. Is that
Correct.
the general premise? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Under no circumstances in 30 or before was anybody called rabbi. That wasn't a thing. It wouldn't have been used as like master or anything like that at the time. Again, you probably were like a hum being used, some other words, or you would just go to the temple and learn from the Kohanim in the temple. But the term rabbi absolutely did not exist.
Wasn't it?
And
Synagogue wasn't either, right?
Right, I was going to ask that, yeah.
Well, so the term synagogue as a place did not exist. Unless you live, so synagogue is actually a Greek term. We start seeing this being used in like Maccabees and stuff. So synagogue, much like church, is like just a group of people. So you could say, I talk to the church, and you're not necessarily meaning you talk to the location, you just talk to a group of people. But synagogue as a location did not exist. So when you read about Jesus going into the synagogue and unrolled the scroll, that is a rabbinic Judaism idea that was not happening in the 30s.
Wow, so that's a big clue that it's fictional, that it's written from from another place that doesn't really understand what was happening in the first century.
Correct. Now we do have synagogues. If you are far enough away from Judea that you couldn't make trips to the temple, so we're talking like in Alexandria, Ethiopia, in these places, sure, there might have been a building and they might have had a Levitical priest that was assigned there who would have scrolls. So sure, that might be a thing. Rabbis still would not have been used. They still would not have been used. The term rabbi that term didn't exist. But you might have synagogues in those cases, but nowhere in Judea would there have been synagogues.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah.
YouTube, I have a question for you. Burns313 says, ask him to explain sealings, SEALINGS.
All right, so my understanding of sealings, again, I've never been Mormon. I'm not a Mormon, never been Mormon. I was married to one. And in fact, the sealing is what led to my divorce. So when I got married, I made it clear, hey, I'm an atheist. I don't have plans to convert. And then we had our first kid. I started going to church to kind of help with children in church because children can kind of get unruly at church. So anyway, sealing is their marriage ceremony. So a sealing is when you get sealed. They believe that it is an eternal marriage. And they believe in like 3 degrees of heaven. And in order to achieve the highest kingdom of heaven, you have to be sealed to your spouse. And that just means that you're together for all time and eternity. And being sealed is required for exaltation. And it has to be done in the temple. It cannot be done outside the temple. And that even gets weird too, because they wear strange clothing. As a matter of fact, their clothing looks like I'll show you what they wear in the temple. Let me go ahead and give this a pause, and we'll get this camera flipped around, and we will. So that's Mormon. That's what they wear in the temple. So clearly, looking at it, not only is it like an appropriation of Jewish culture, but they're stealing from the Masons as well.
Yeah, that's wild.
What do the magic underwear look like?
You guys want to know? I used to sell Mormon magic underwear and made a lot of money off of it. That's a true story. I was a clothing reseller for a long time, and one day when I was cleaning out an estate, a woman had a bunch of discontinued, which made it more valuable because they discontinue it. You can only get Mormon underwear from one place, and for it to be real Mormon underwear. And they do discontinue certain styles and change it very little, because it's very strict how they make have what their underwear must look like. But it's different. It depends. Like, there's Mormon underwear that is bras. There's Mormon underwear that is slips. There's Mormon underwear that's like kind of like long johns. There's, you know, so there's different parts of the Mormon underwear. But should you come across it like I did, you can resell it for a lot of money. And Mormons will get mad at you for doing that. However, Mormons will also be the ones buying it from you. So, go figure.
Yeah. So, what it looks like is
It wasn't always used underwear, but used bra is not gross, you guys. Like, just so you know, a used bra or used undershirt is not gross.
So yeah, the best way I can describe it is like the bottoms look like boxer briefs.
Yeah.
And I believe they have a symbol on the knee, and then the shirts just look like your regular shirt. They'll either have a crew neck or a V-neck, and then on the chest they'll have two messianic symbols on the chest and then one on the belly button. And those are like, and they're clearly messianic symbols, or not messianic, Masonic, Mason symbols, or Mason symbols. But they believe that they're like the symbols of the priesthood.
Russell, whether you know it or not, I actually made very, very, very good money. Am I rich? No, but I made a lot of money off of magic underwear. It's not something that you can get if you're not Mormon, and if it's discontinued, you definitely can't get it. So,
I mean, you've seen Orange is the New Black, right?
yes.
Like, they sold underwear and made a lot of money doing it.
Yeah.
And you can't even get on their website. I was going to go bring up prices off their website, and I can't even go online and see it.
Nope. The amount of money I made off of what is called granny panties is just another thing. Sissy panties and granny panties make a lot of money too. Just saying. Also, well-worn shoes, ladies, well-worn shoes. So if you are thinking about OnlyFans but you aren't brave enough, just go check out well-worn shoes, okay? You'll thank me later.
And
That's cool. I'm going to jump down, but thanks for letting me ask my questions and say my things.
Yeah. Well, no, not a problem. Thanks for coming up. And so that's the thing too. So like bras are not like part of the garment because the garment is the shirt itself. So I would often be at like my ex-wife's house with like her parents and stuff at a family function with her, and they'd find out that like somebody was getting married, and it's one of those things that's like, oh, because they believe like one of the discussions is when they wear the garment and they go to wear a bra, can they wear their bra underneath the garment, or does it have to be above the garment because the symbols need to be touching their skin? Like, how does this work? And I remember sitting there and they're like having this full-on discussion about this, and I'm like,
well,
this is
I
weird.
also worked for Soma, which, if you don't know, is owned by Chico's, and it is their lingerie company. And I often fitted Mormon women for bras, and they definitely wore those over the Mormon undergarments. They did not let them touch their skin.
Yeah, and you're just like, this is goofy. And yeah, and you'll hear these stories. I remember talking with my ex-wife about this one time, and I'm like, why does it matter? And she would like tell me these stories about people that would like be caught in a fire and they got burned, and everywhere was burned on their skin, but where the garments were at, where the garment was at, they were not burned. And I was like, yeah, but like it doesn't like cover your entire body, like your head's exposed. Like that's like horrible protection. That's like God giving you like the ultimate FU.
Yeah, I fried you everywhere but where this is touching your body. Like, why do people always find that miraculous? So God took out 700 houses, but that Bible remains. That one Bible isn't burnt at all. What a great God He is.
Yeah. Or you'll have like a number of years ago, there was a tornado that swept through Salt Lake. And as you know, tornadoes, they come down, they'll go, and then they can go up, and then they'll come back down. And it jumped over the temple, right? And so people are like, see, God didn't want the temple destroyed. And it's like, yeah, but look at the neighborhoods that God said, screw these kids.
Yeah.
Unalive people. And you're just like, why are you guys saying the temple was saved? Like, that's goofy.
That is goofy. I don't know why they say that. Russell, actually selling used clothes is a very lucrative business in general. My best year of selling used clothes, I profited $50,000 in just used clothing. So it's actually pretty lucrative. It's just a lot of work. It really is. And a lot of dealing with clothes constantly. After a while, I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like so done with looking at clothes and buying clothes and sorting clothes and steaming clothes and taking pictures of clothes and talking about clothes. I couldn't take it after a while. It just became everything. But it's pretty good money. If you need a side hustle, I'd look into it. You guys think you...
While Raw Soul is...
Oh, go ahead, Cyber.
Oh, no, I was going to say, while Raw Soul is in here, I just have a question. Why you keep running from Ian? You keep yapping in his chat, and then you just run from him when he invites you up.
Russell, you're scared of Ian. I didn't think you were scared of anybody. I thought you liked getting up there debating people. What's going on with that?
He doesn't have the boots for the hype with Ian.
He doesn't have the boots for the hikes he already takes. But I didn't think he was scared of anybody because he's willing to go up against, Joyful and Joel and Mez. I think he's willing to go up against Justin. So I'm not really sure why he would be scared of Ian. That seems like a give me. You guys, if you have a question for Cyber, we're going to be live for about 10 more minutes here. Come on up, ask. You guys cooked Q-Top today. Did you cook Q-Top today?
Look. So Q-Top runs this type of pre-sup where he won't even listen to your argument because in order for you to argue his point, in order for it to be rational, you must believe in God. And if you don't believe in God, then he's not even going to listen to your argument because it's not rational because of your lack of belief in God. So he would unmute. I didn't go up. It wasn't me. Dr. Blitz and Ian went up. Ian went up first, and then Q-Top kicked him and then tried to lie about kicking him. But what people don't realize is when a host kicks somebody, if you pay attention, at the top of your screen is chat. Every now and then, TikTok will glitch, and it'll say, host kicked guest. Or it'll say, moderator kicked guest. Now, as a live creator, we see, it'll pop up who did the kicking. We'll see who kicked.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was like, and people were like, no, it literally just said host kicked. And Q-Top was trying to deny that he kicked Ian. But then Blitz hopped up, and Blitz was like, I'm going to assume your stance. For this argument, I'll agree God exists. And then it was premise 1, God exists. Premise 2, the earth is flat. The earth is actually round, thus God does not exist. And Q-Top just doesn't know how an internal critique works. And
that's funny.
And on that real quick, one of my biggest pet peeves, especially in the deconstruction community, is not understanding how an internal critique works.
Oh my God.
So, yeah. So what we do is we get a lot of correcting. We get a lot like when somebody comes on and they say, well, the Bible says Lucifer was in the garden. If we're going to give them a true internal critique, we must accept the belief that Lucifer was in the garden, right? Because that's what an internal critique is. We're going to accept their argument,
Right.
and then we're going to put holes in it, right? That's how an internal critique works. And so often I'll hear in a debate where somebody will come up and they'll bring that exact one. The snake was Lucifer. And then we run into like a 10-minute side tangent on, no, that wasn't Lucifer. Nowhere does it say that was Lucifer. And then the person will like, fine, I'm going to abandon that. And then the host tries to turn it into, well, we're doing an internal critique on you. It's like, well, no, you just made it clear you weren't. So learn what an internal critique is. And I would say my second pet peeve is something that is rampant in the deconstruction is needing to understand what an appeal to authority is like when you appeal to one of them that I hear quite a bit will be Rabbi Bert or Rabbi Hannah. I'll hear a lot of people, they'll go and they're not Jewish. They don't understand things from like the Jewish perspective. They've not read the Talmud, the Jewish scriptures. They've not read these. They just ask the rabbi and then they go and say, well, this rabbi said blah, 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 blah. Like if you're going to invoke Judaism and a rabbi's view on things, please make sure you've actually read the literature, understand why we have these views that we have, and also come to an understanding that Jews are not a monolith.
That's right.
There are things that Rabbi Hannah and Rabbi Bert are going to disagree on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not necessarily fundamental to the religious beliefs, but there's things that myself and Rabbi Hannah might disagree with, or myself and Rabbi Bert disagree with, right? And so when you try to invoke a particular rabbi and you try to say, well, so-and-so said this, but you're invoking that like the religion is a monolith, that's problematic.
Yeah, definitely.
So don't try to do that, because then you end up putting Jews at odds with each other, because then it gets to, well, so-and-so told me and then when I say, well, no, that's not necessarily the view in its entirety, then it's just problematic. So don't use an appeal to authority fallacy.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't know what fallacies are and which ones are really fallacies or not, because I remember not very many shows ago of Justin's, this guy kept saying like, that's this fallacy or that fallacy. And at one point, Justin goes, like, well, do you speak Hebrew? Can you read the Hebrew? Can you speak Hebrew? And he was like, no. And he goes, well, I can. And what I'm telling you, and he said, that's an appeal to authority fallacy. No.
Yeah, that's an appeal to language. Appeal to language. That's an appeal to language. Now, with that said, there's nothing wrong with asking a question and then being like, okay, can you show me how you draw that conclusion?
Yeah.
And then, a lot of times we would say, oh, well, that may not be for this TikTok video, but offline, and we can go through and we can talk about what the Tanakh says. We can go look at what Midrash says. We can show you where it talks about it in the Talmud. And then you'll have an understanding on why we, as that individual, or whether it's an Ashkenaz versus Sephardi and different looks on things, why this view has. And then when you do go to appeal to something, you can then say, here's what so-and-so has taught me, and here's how they arrived to that conclusion. And then you can show that to them. And that's not an appeal to authority. That's you showing that you have an understanding, a grasp of why they came to the conclusion that they did.
Right. And I think that I think also there's a time to appeal to authority. You know, like for instance, if we don't both speak Hebrew, maybe we want to go see what the original Hebrew says, and we should appeal to an authority that does speak Hebrew when we do that. So, you know, like it's just ridiculous to think that we're never going to look at somebody who has more knowledge. Like obviously, if I'm going to talk about archaeological finds, I'm going to be appealing to somebody's authority on that because I'm not an archaeologist.
Yes.
I guess
No, my issue is, yeah, no, it's just my thing is like a lot of people when they do the appeal to authority is, and if you're doing like a quick Google search, if you remember something and you just need to do it, like I don't see an issue with that. But it's when you just go to somebody and you extract a little bit of information and you hold on to that, but you don't take the extra effort to understand why they came to that conclusion.
I'm sorry, we have a guest coming up, but oh well, we did, but then they dropped. If you were in the guest request, you can come up. I'm sorry, I just saw you there, just came to accept your request, and then you disappeared. But if you want to come up and ask Cyber a question, please feel free to request back up again. I guess it's a blood moon tonight, huh? Is that true? Oh, there's Ems. Are you coming up, Ems? Was that you? Come on up. Ask your friend Cyber a question. Stump him on something.
Ems, I will cook you twice on Sunday about more. So Ems sounds like this Joseph Smith character that keeps popping up.
Yeah, I've seen that guy too. I don't know. I haven't ever seen them in the same room either, so.
No, I haven't either. There's also this other person, and I don't know if they're trying to be funny, but I don't know if they're running a parody account, but their name is Catholic Ems.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, it's Catholic M's, and the thing is like a cat in a Pope hat.
Oh.
And they try to like talk like M's. So
Oh,
I know
that's
it's
funny.
not M, but they use the pattern of M's talk.
Is my feed freaking out on TikTok right now? Because it did on my phone for me. I don't know. It was weird. Hi, sis. How are you?
Hey, good to talk to you again, Crystal.
Yeah, good to talk to you too.
Yeah, I kept going in and out of my request to get here because it said my TikTok needed updated, and then it said my phone needed updated, and sometimes the audio is still off, so if I don't respond, that's why.
And for some reason, my mic got a lot lower than Cyber's, and I don't know why my mic is doing weird things tonight, but it is. So there you go.
It's the moon. It's the moon.
And I went over here to look at my mic, and then I'm like, oh wait, my mic's not even hooked up.
Well, my mic is hooked up, but it's being weird tonight, and so are my headphones. So I'm sorry, you guys. I'm really sorry. I'm still learning how to do all this. It's a lot to learn. Did you have a question for Cyber?
I am here to vibe, but I do have a question, I guess. It's not a specific one. But yesterday, I had asked a guest what their resources were for those who were deconstructing. And so if you do have any resources that you like to share, I'd be open to hearing that.
So if you're Mormon, well, we'll just go over some things. If you're Mormon, look up what's called the CES letter. CES stands for Church Education System. Look up the CES letter. The guy who wrote it had some genuine questions. He saw that there were some things that just didn't jive with the church, and he lived in Utah, and his bishop was like, oh yeah, I'm good friends with the Church Education System president, the guy who's in charge of the Church Education System. Let me give you his information. And the guy emailed him, no response. Guy sent him certified mail, no response. So then he went public. So if you're going to deconstruct from any of the Latter-day Saint faiths, look at the CES letter. As far as general deconstruction, I don't think I can emphasize enough. get into the Deconstruction Junction Discord. Get into that Discord. It is a wealth of knowledge. Listen to a lot of creators there. If you're already on the path of deconstruction, it's hard, it's difficult. Seriously, jump into Crystal's lives. Crystal's lives tend to turn into debates, and they end up being, hey, we're all going through this together. Let's talk about this. So seriously, follow Crystal's and other creators that hold those discussions. Listen to other creators who hold people's feet to the fire, like Joyful, Justin, myself. Give them things. If you're questioning whether or not Jesus even existed, go follow Jaren and go listen to some of these other creators. And if you really want to deconstruct, the biggest advice I can give you, read the Bible.
Yep.
Read the Bible.
I have it in front of me right now.
Yep. Read the Bible from and take and put aside your religious views. Just put them to the side. Read the Bible and get a notepad with you. Things that you can probably skip in the Old Testament is in Genesis, or anytime we get a genealogy, just skip that. That's not needed. You don't need to look at those. But read the Bible, have a notepad with you, and I want you to write down anytime God does an action. If God does an action, write it down. And have 2 columns and write it down. Was it a good action or was it a bad action? And by bad action is, did he unalive somebody? And then reread it and then go put a check mark next to it if you think that the action that God took was justified. So, for example, with David and Bathsheba, one act caused 10 women to get raped, and it caused a child to be unalived. So those are 2 different acts. Well, I would consider them 11 different actions, because each woman is a different person. 11 different actions that occurred for one crime. Was it justified? And if you think it was, if you think it was not justified, put a check mark next to it. And then by the time you get done reading the Old Testament, just look at the atrocities, look at the monster that God is. And
let's not
like,
forget
hey,
that baby suffered for 7 days before he unalived too.
Yep.
And then, yeah. By the way,
and just,
you can join us on Wednesday mornings right here on my channel at 10 a.m. Pacific time if you want to read the Bible with us. We go through it together. Often Bert, Cyber, Rabbi Hannah, different people show up and help us, decipher what we're reading and figure it all out. So if you want to join us, you can. Also, don't forget, we have a very good friend, Joel Reads Bible, and if you don't have time to sit down and read the Bible, you can just listen to Joel read it to you.
Yeah, thank you. I actually just wrote out the good God actions, the bad God actions. I was previously working on like a New Testament versus Old Testament column, because I felt like when I was watching creators, a lot of the bad stuff was coming from the Old Testament, so I was trying to figure out what's in the New Testament that's bad. And so far, I'm in the book of Jude, and I don't like what I see. So,
well, do you have a Bible with you right now?
Yeah, I'm in Jude chapter. Oh my God!
Can you do me a favor, real quick? Open your Bible to Mark 7.
Okay. You know what's funny? I used to know this by heart. I used to be able to locate Mark.
I don't know it at all. But Ghost of Christian Past, she will take you on she'll challenge you to I think she calls it a sword fight, where you have to find a Bible verse the fastest. You can't find it online as fast as she can find it in her Bible. It's crazy. John Paul.
This is just because you invoke Ghost of Christian Past.
John Paul over on YouTube says, also watch Alex O'Connor and Christopher Hitchens. You guys keep tapping the screen, sharing out the live. And don't forget, I have a gift goal. If we can get me to 20,000 likes before we end tonight, tonight, I would really appreciate that. Also, my gift goal is the little skull apples. I don't know what they are, but they just look different. I have a goal of 333, and they're just 5 coins each. So if you can, please send those up. And don't forget to gift my beautiful panel members. I appreciate it so much.
Okay, you said Mark what?
7.
Mark chapter 7.
Okay, found it.
Yep. So what's going on here is this is kind of the start of rabbinic Judaism. This is where we have a case of the Pharisees have come to a realization that there are issues with the Torah, right? We probably shouldn't be stoning people. And in this case here, 1 through 6, we're talking about the Pharisees have started washing their hands before they eat. And this isn't something that's taught in Torah. This isn't Torah. And they observe in verse 4, they notice that Jesus and his disciples are not washing their hands. So they go to Jesus and they say, "Hey, why are they not washing their hands?" And then Jesus essentially says, he said to them, Isaiah prophesied rightly about you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines. And I want you to pay attention to how many times it says human precepts as doctrine or human traditions, because it says that a bunch of times. And then he says, you abandon the commandments of God and hold the human tradition. Then he said to them, you have a fine way of rejecting the commandment of God in order to keep your tradition. For Moses said, honor father and mother, and whatever speaks evil of mother or father must surely unalive. So Jesus holds to Torah. Jesus wants you to follow Torah. That's what he's saying here. This other stuff that you're doing, that's human tradition. Don't follow it. Do what the Torah says. And you'll find that when you actually read what Jesus says, this is actually what he means. And then you'll get cases where people will bring up the adulterous woman and the whole, let he who has no sin cast the first stone. That was added by the church fathers. That text, that story is not found in the original manuscripts. When we look at the early manuscripts, Papyrus 66, Papyrus 75, Codex Sinaiticus, Codex Vaticanus, that story is not in there. That story gets added in after 400.
And that story is outside of Mark chapter 7, right?
That's in John chapter 8. Well, it starts in John 7. It starts in the last verse of John 7. And then it's John 8, 1 through 11.
Okay, John. Sorry, Crystal, is this something I should be talking about on Wednesday? Is it okay?
No, you can talk about it now. I do want to point out, Gray Eyes in TikTok chat said evil-god.web.app randomized evil command action law from God with a link to a verse in any version. Oh. So that's pretty cool. Also over on YouTube, John Paul said, Jesus didn't even know germs existed. God should know that. I have to agree. Yeah. God should know that.
Cyber, when you were going over, okay. So, what was, you said the texts were added. I wasn't aware that there, you called it the papyrus. I'm not familiar with what that means.
Oh, yeah. So the papyrus for it is the earliest manuscripts we have with John is Papyrus 66, Papyrus 75, Codex. So whenever you hear Codex is like an actual book of the New Testament or the Old Testament. Those are what a Codex is. So Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus. They do not contain these stories. And it's not like the manuscript itself is missing. It goes right from the last verse of John chapter 7 to chapter 8 verse 12, right? So we see those being right next to each other. So the story's just not there.
So when I have heard other creators talk about this verse, and this is good because this is something new. Previously, what I was hearing is that when he said that, it wasn't necessarily so gracious as everyone interprets it to be. It was about the time period. It wasn't necessarily anything more than the man was not there. So I'm just a little confused. When this was added, do you think that they meant? Do you think it was meant with the intention to have other people think that Jesus was gracious? Because why would they put all this energy in adding something that wasn't originally there if ultimately it was not even supposed to be a gracious statement? It didn't change very much about the perception of Jesus.
Yeah, so John is the last of the Gospels that was written. And when you read John expects you to have already read it, presupposes that you've already read the synoptics, because it kind of makes mentions of things like you've already read them. And it doesn't like introduce these characters. Like it meant, like when it talks about characters, it assumes you know who they are. And so what John is trying to do is take Jesus and completely separate Christianity from Judaism. And so when we have the synoptic gospels where Jesus is saying, hey, follow Torah, well, that's a problem for Christianity, right? Because the idea of Christianity is that God made this new set of laws, there's a new covenant. So I believe that this story was added so that when people go and say, no, Jesus says to follow the Torah, they can go, we got this story here where Jesus is openly breaking Torah.
Okay, thank you.
And in fact, the earliest source we have for that passage comes from a book called Didascalia Apostolorum. It was written by a bishop in Syriac in the 3rd century. So it's not the story exactly, but essentially what it's saying is that there was a daughter that was to be condemned because she had been caught in adultery. And the bishop is saying, hey, I'm not going to condemn her, neither should you. She didn't sin, she's forgiven. And so from this book, Didascalia Apostolorum, they took that and then they just put Jesus into it. And then they put it into John.
Is there I know I asked this before, but is there like a single source that you obtained all this information from so I can go back and look at it?
Yes. So if you go to the Text and the Text and Canon Institute, it's a Phoenix seminary. You can read about the adulterous woman. There's also another source that is really awesome. If I could get big screen again.
You can. Here you go.
So if you go and you look up the Center for New Testament Restoration, so right here I have John chapter 8, verse 1. It'll tell you what it says. So this is the Greek of what it said and what the verses are. But it'll show you that and it'll mention the name. And the earliest that we have it found is boom. So if I go and we look up, if I go look up Matthew chapter 1:1, we see that it first appears in 225 is like the date, and it's found in B1. You can click it and it'll give you what the manuscript text looks like. And then elsewhere on the site, you can go find pictures of the manuscripts themselves.
That's really good. I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just saying that's really good info I didn't know about.
I wish this would have been something that was a focal point of church. I remember just, I guess, briefly touching the surface of apologetics as a high schooler. I was pissing off my pastor. He didn't even think it was really worth it to go over with me. He just basically said, Dead Sea Scrolls, and kept walking. But
Dead Sea Scrolls don't have any New Testament in them. There is no New Testament in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, there is no New Testament in it. That's wild that they would say that.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm glad you think I look so educated, but I really don't know Greek or Hebrew like that.
And if you don't mind me asking, what denomination were you?
Non-denomination, I don't mind at all.
Okay, yeah, because throwing Dead Sea Scrolls then is just goofy because it has like Enoch. Enoch was found in there, right? So they're like, Dead Sea Scrolls, oh, I guess Enoch's canon now because Enoch was found in Dead Sea.
I should have came back with that. I should have actually looked at it and then just said, what about this other god? No, I would have gotten kicked out.
Dead Sea Scrolls. That's
But
so
yeah,
cryptic too. Dead Sea Scrolls, and then walk away. Just.
I vividly see it in my mind. Like, no, I mean, okay, I'm not roasting him, but this is just the visual left in my mind. This is an older white man, bald, super tall, and he's got like a belly, and it's just like, none of that is wrong. That's just, and he's got this stern, mean face with these Santa Claus cheeks. And he just walks away from me, and he says that with like somewhat of a smug, like he just did his big thing with that. Like, oh yeah, I proved her question. And he didn't do much, and he just walked away. So
That's funny.
Well, it's better than what like other people are told. Like so Mormons, problem with Mormon is they talk about horses existing in the Book of Mormon, right? But the Book of Mormon takes place, it literally starts at the Babylonian exile, like right before the Babylonian exile, right? So that's around like 500, right? Horses were already extinct in North America. And so now we've got like this group of Jews building a boat and sailing across a whole ass Atlantic Ocean and landing in the Americas. And they have horses. Somehow there's horses, and they're using curved swords, and curved swords didn't exist. They're writing in this language called Reformed Egyptian, like all this goofiness that we don't have any evidence for. There's zero archaeological evidence. And Mormons are straight up taught. And I remember asking my ex about this. I'm like, but there's no evidence. Evidence doesn't exist. Well, that's just because God took it away because we need to have faith. God wants us to have faith. And I'm like,
Everything's
what?
so convenient.
And oh, go ahead.
I just can't believe I believed so much shit. And so when I laugh at people and the things like they believed, I'm really laughing at myself. I really am. Because even though I wasn't Mormon, let's face it, Christianity has enough ridiculous beliefs in it. So, oh my goodness.
I get sick to my stomach when I maybe it was Joel who read this. I don't remember. Some creator, Deconstruction space, was talking about, you know, the devil being a serpent, you know, like an actual snake. And we all believed, like we all really felt like there was a talking snake. And I just, oh my God.
Oh no, that's the first evidence for Harry Potter. Eve was a parcel tongue.
There was also a talking donkey. I mean, did none of this make us go, what? What
How
are
much
we?
that?
Yeah, there. Is it Ahaz? I don't know. One of those guys has a talking donkey. Ahab.
No, it wasn't Ahaz. But yeah, there's a talking donkey. Jesus straight up tells people to go steal a donkey. He tells his disciples to go steal a donkey.
That's why I call him a donkey thief in chat a lot. I'll say Jesus was a liar and a donkey thief. And people are like, what do you mean he was a donkey thief?
Balaam.
Oh, it was Balaam. Okay.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so it's just that there's so much goofiness to it. And then here's how here's my view of how the thing with Paul, now keep in mind, I'm a mythicist. I don't believe Paul actually existed. But here's what I think. I think Paul and Luke are traveling to Damascus. Paul falls off his horse, and while Luke is like helping him up, Luke just happens to be standing in the sun, and he hears these Christians behind him because he's on his way to go. He hears these like Christians like talking, and he all of a sudden thinks the shadow of Luke was a vision of Jesus. And now we've got the Pauline letters. Like, people don't ever stop and think about like what they're reading and stuff.
I don't know if they're reading though. Like, to be fair, like I think that's a part of it.
I do too. I know for a fact that I said so many times that I've read the whole Bible many times, but to be honest with you, I don't know if I was just saying that now because I'm thinking, how did I miss some of this shit? Like, there's no way I missed it. And I know now that Christians get really good at lying to themselves. Did I just lie to myself? Or was I just so convinced by apologetics? I don't know. I really don't know.
What if you just didn't? What if it was just a matter of not thinking critically about it? Because I did that, and I really do not remember a talking donkey, and I thought I read the Bible, the whole thing.
When I just go over Noah's Ark story again, and I read it again, I'm like, how did I not question any of this story? How did I not go, there was only one door and one window, and they remained shut the entire time, and I thought they could survive through all that methane gas? What was I thinking?
Did you go to the Creation Museum in Kentucky?
Oh, no.
Did you get brainwashed?
No,
Okay.
I didn't do that, but I did listen to Ken Ham a lot back in the day.
Oh,
I
okay.
did listen to him.
I live in Ohio, which is obviously very close to Kentucky, so I had the pleasure of, my childhood just traveling there often. And so for me, seeing it in person, you're like, oh yeah, God did that. Like, it's right in front of me, of course. With one, because Ken Ham made it, a real life replica. And so you could go there and you could see it and you could just imagine, like, okay, this really happened. And so somebody said you have to gaslight yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was also physically gaslighting because I saw it, as a kid, and I was like, okay, well, it happened. There's the proof.
Yeah, well, he had books and he had movies and everything to show you that evolution couldn't be true, because if a woodpecker slammed his beak on a this is a true thing he has, okay, Cyber? If a woodpecker, the first one, slammed his beak on a tree trunk, he would have killed himself, so that's impossible for it to have been evolutionary. And it wouldn't be until years later that I would actually go and listen to the anti-apologist side of the story and be like, well, that's not how evolution works, Crystal.
Yeah, that's not. Well, and let me show you a little bit of a Mandela effect. So this will be for chat as well. I want you to don't look at scriptures. I want you to put one in the chat. If you remember the story of Jesus saying, if you harm a child, it's better that a millstone be feasted or fastened around your neck. But it's if you've harmed a child. Put ones in the chat if you remember that being the telling of the story. Reason being is that's not what Jesus says. The word is, Jesus says, if you cause one of these little ones to stumble or to sin, that's what he actually says. Because there'll be a lot of times when I'll bring up the God hates children, I'll have that discussion, and they'll be like, and they'll quote this verse, and they're under the impression that Jesus said, he who harmed a child. It's like, no, that's not what he says. He says if you cause a child to not believe, if you cause them to lose faith, that's why you ought have it. So if somebody is telling a child that religion isn't true, go drown him, is what Jesus is saying. Go drown him. Go throw him in the water with a stone around his neck.
There was a lot of missed opportunity. Now that I'm just in this deconstruction space, that I'm noticing, there was opportunity for real goodness to be accounted for by certain laws. There could have been something about don't harm children. There could have been something about don't harm women. Like, I just, yeah.
Well, the one that gets me that Joel brings up a lot is if you go to, I think it's in Leviticus where they discuss the laws regarding sexual immorality. One thing you'll find is that fornication is not there, okay? But there is a lot of stuff there, like don't fuck your aunt, don't fuck your uncle, don't fuck your brother's wife. You know what's not there?
Don't do that with kids.
That's right. That's not there. That's not there.
Yeah.
It's wild to me, but they somehow forgot that one.
Well, there's no outrage for it, in real life with Christian. Like, if there is, I don't see it. The same way that there is for other people. Sorry, what was that?
I don't either. I'm disagreeing with you. I don't either. I don't see it.
Well, I like this. I don't know if you're, but her name's Kate the Great, and I was watching. Yeah, she's cool, and I think she taught me something new. Or I'm sorry, I get people confused all the time. This could be attributed to her, it could not. But she was going over how basically the statement in the Bible, or maybe that was you, because I was talking with you yesterday, but how the statement in the Bible that everyone uses to be very anti-LGBTQ was only really meant to say you cannot harm another man because it's fine if you harm a woman, she's property. And it just makes me, I have not been able to express how angry I am after, because that has impacted so many things today, and I don't know if anybody would care if they realized that it was mistranslated, but it's literally killing people. And
they know, if you go to seminary, you learn this, but they choose not to teach it. Yeah.
No, don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
The things they learn in seminary are very much the things you'll hear from Justin. That's why many people, once they go to seminary, end up deconstructing, because they find these things out. But there are definitely pastors who say, I know what it says, but I am going to not tell my congregation this because I don't think it will go over very well. Yeah, Mishkaveh.
Well,
they really follow the
yeah,
God. Sorry.
I was going to say, yeah. So Rabbi Hanna brings up a good one, Mishkaveh, which is used in the clobber verses. Right? The first time we see this is when Reuben is like sleeping with his stepmom. Right? That's the first time we see it. And anytime we see like the clobber verses with homosexuality, that's the phraseology that's being used with it, right? With that, it's kind of wild too, because you'll hear about all these other things about, well, it's talking about not sleeping with children. Like, no, that's not what it's talking about. It's literally talking about like it's not consensual.
Right.
That's what it's talking about.
I had a friend who, her father was a pastor.
You got a little muffled, sis.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Crystal. I had a friend whose father was a pastor. He went to school and everything, and that's what, when she told me about this, that's exactly what she said, Cyber. She said that it was about an older adult male and a young kid. So I guess in that instance, maybe he was taught incorrectly, but it's just been wild to realize that, now. And I think another thing that really hurts is understanding that a lot of people thought the curse of Ham was somehow a real thing, and all black people, all dark-skinned people are evil, and it's like,
Oh, don't talk to the Mormons. They still believe that.
oh, please, my husband is right now out playing basketball with his Mormon friend, and I cannot even I can't even think about that right now. I mean, I can't. Don't get me started.
Yeah, it's wild. Well, here's something too. Genesis 2, this is going to harken back to what we were talking about just a little bit. So Genesis 2, it's talking about how the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper as his partner. And so, first of all, God, being all-knowing, why did he not know that man would be lonely, and why did he not know that the animals wouldn't be good enough and just make Eve to begin with? But we run into so out of the ground the Lord formed every animal of the field, and then it found, then in verse 20, the man gave names to all the cattle, the birds of the air, to every animal of the field. But for the man, there was not found a helper as his partner. So then we get the removing of the rib. And then, for this is, this at last is the bone of my bones, the flesh of my flesh. One shall be called woman, out of the man, this was taken. There, and then we get this marriage passage, just out of the blue. We found the partner, marriage passage. What was Adam doing with these animals? That partner wasn't found, and as soon as the partner is found, we're talking about marriage.
Oh my God, please don't. Oh my God, I cannot.
I'm just saying,
Oh.
words mean words.
Adam was the first furry that said it. No, I have said that before. I'm like, God is like, hey, do you want to fuck a cow or a snake? Which one do you want, Adam? And he would go through every animal before he would go, oh, maybe I should make you a woman. I just think it's another way for the writers to just put women below all animals. Personally, it was just another way to make us laugh.
No, it is, but I'm just imagining, this going on, and did he come up with the names before he grabbed them by the horns or after?
Yeah, I don't know. John Paul, I don't know how one of your messages got deleted, because I'm not deleting any messages, and I think I'm the only mod in there right now, so I don't know. It must have just glitched or something. Anyway, anybody else in chat have any questions for Cyber? If you want to come up and ask him a question, we can go for a little bit longer. Also, please and thank you for tapping the screen, sharing out the live, and all the gifts. I do have a gift goal of the Skull Apples. I'm at 41 of 333, so if you can, send those up. Don't forget, though, to also gift Cyber. Make sure you're following Sis and Cyber tonight. Both amazing people in our community, but especially be following Cyber. Cyber, are you on YouTube now as well?
I am. It is under the same name, too. So give that a follow. Also, go give Unapologetic a follow on both TikTok and YouTube as well. Give both of those a follow as well.
Absolutely. And don't forget to follow me on YouTube and Twitch. Those links are in my bio. If you want to support the live, you can always send gifts to help me reach my gift goal, or you can click one of the links in my bio and gift the live so I can keep doing more of Decon Q&A with CrystalJae. I should be having some more creators as amazing as Cyber coming up with people like Justin and Thinker, Christina Carroll, Elo Ray, and more coming your way. Joel and Mezzo too. So make sure you're subscribed and click the little bell if you want to know when I go live. And I will be back on Wednesday for Non-Believers Bible Study. We are in Exodus if you want to join us Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I was recovering from surgery, so I didn't do that this week, but we will be back next Wednesday with that.
And I would really like when it comes to the Bible study, really give that a chance, because usually you're going to have Rabbi Hannah, Rabbi Bert, some other people, and they do a deep dive. It'll be read a verse, and then there'll be like a half hour to a 45-minute discussion about that verse. And what does this mean? What's the implications of it? Does it hark to anything else? And so I think it's extremely educational, and to have voices from the community where the text comes from, and listening to the different opinions there as well. So it's extremely educational. And Crystal, thanks for having me up. I really appreciate it.
Well, I've really enjoyed our talk tonight. Sis, did you have any more questions for Cyber tonight?
I did, but I mean, I plan to be there Wednesday. If that's a better time because it was just a Bible question. So
well, you can go ahead and ask him if you want. Yeah, go right ahead. You're fine, right, Cyber?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have Genesis open right now. So if I remember correctly, I think it's Genesis 1 and 2, where it kind of contradicts itself because it goes out of order of the creation. So
Yes.
I'm trying to see that whole thing about like creating the animals and then immediately creating Adam. But can you help me find that?
Oh yeah, so that's going to be in Genesis 2, and you're going to have verse 18 where it says, "Then the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper as his partner."
Oh, that's gross. I see it now. Oh,
Wait, you guys, in YouTube, John Paul says a big thing is when
Hold on. That got to get clipped. You got to clip that. That was oh, that's gross.
yeah, I will. John Paul says a big thing is when the Ten Commandments say don't covet your neighbor's wife, cattle, etc. It's almost like women are property. Agree. Then Noah said, I'm enjoying all the YouTube lives, which I'm really glad you are. And we're trying to get more people out on the YouTube for all of our YouTube viewers. But Sixum Gross says, fun fact, Adam was having fun banging all those animals until he got to the porcupines.
oh my God. Hey, you know what God also never said was wrong? I don't remember any law against bestiality.
Yes, there is. There is laws against that. It's the only other time that they say mishkaveh, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Cyber?
Yep.
Okay, what do you guys know? Where? What verse and what book?
Oh.
Let me see.
Leviticus 18.
Leviticus 18. Is that New Testament? That's old, right?
That's old.
That's Old Testament. That's part of the Torah.
18:23. You shall not have sexual relations with any animal, defiling yourself with it, nor shall any woman give herself to an animal to have sexual relationships with it. It is perversion. Whoever lies with an animal shall be put to unalivement.
Okay, all right. Well, something good. Oh, that's kind of right after Genesis. Interesting. Wow. I've enjoyed talking with you both. Thank you again, Crystal, and thank you, Cyber.
Well, thank you so much for coming up, sis. We appreciate you. I think we're going to go ahead and end the live here now tonight. You guys, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you're following Cyber Deconstruction on all of his accounts, YouTube, TikTok, and wherever he can be found. Make sure you also join the Deconstruction Junction Discord server. If you haven't, that link is in my bio, where you can meet all these great creators and more. We have all kinds of resources. There's literally a tab called Resources where there is a Google Drive with a plethora of information in there. We also have Justin's Magic List over there and all kinds of book recommendations and so forth. So make sure you're in the Discord if you're not. And don't forget to follow me or subscribe to me over on YouTube. It's absolutely free. And I'm trying to get to the 500 subscribers so I can be monetized over there. Cyber, thank you so much for being here. Are you going live tonight?
I won't be tonight. I might be going live tomorrow with Ems. I do have a funeral tomorrow.
I'm sorry about that.
But I'm not going to go live tonight. But I do appreciate you having me up.
Well, I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll get together in about a month or so for another Decon Q&A with CrystalJae. You guys, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for all the likes, the shares, the gifts, and the subscriptions. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I'll see you around the mean streets of TikTok. Bye-bye.